All right, guys. Hi, I'm back. Today is September 1st, which means it is the first day of meteorological fall. And that means it is time to start thinking about what is coming next. And of course, that is winter. And so this is going to be my winter outlook for the 2024-25 season. Before I go any farther, though, I do want to remind you, if you haven't joined my pro site, I would love for you to do that. You can join at www.patreon.com/Ohio Valley Weather. All right, let's get into this. So this is what we saw last year. At this time last year, we were at the beginning of a moderate to strong El Nino, and you can see that in the area that I circled on this map, and that was the major driving force of our winter last year. And so this year we have a big change. This is the ENSO graph, or the El Nino Southern Oscillation as of today. And you can see the temperature of the waters in the Pacific Ocean has been consistently dropping. Really, it started back in the spring and it's been dropping all summer. As of today, we are at a minus 0.512. That means that the waters there of the Pacific Ocean are more than a half a degree colder than normal. Or to put this into perspective, last year we finally made it up to a positive 1.5. And so that means that the temperature of those waters has dropped by 2 degrees since last spring. And so this is a significant change, and this is going to have a profound effect on our winter moving forward. So once again, this is what we saw last year, and now this is the graph as of today. You can see the blue there that I have circled, indicating water that is colder than normal there in the Pacific Ocean. So what is this going to mean for us moving forward? Well, looking at what we saw last year, this was the El Nino winter. And notice last year we saw this polar jet stream that was pushed very far to the north. And this caused much warmer than normal air to come into most of North America, including the Ohio Valley. And so last year this resulted in us having a much warmer than normal winter and much drier. You can see drier here in the United States. In other words, less snow. And so at this time last year, that is what I was expecting. And of course, that is what happened. We definitely saw a warmer than normal winter and drier conditions or less snow. But now we have La Nina beginning. And so what does that look like? So this is just a typical map for a La Nina winter. You can see that the polar jet stream is expected to be much further south, and specifically, we're expecting to see this ridge over the western United States, which results in a trough over the eastern United States, including the Ohio Valley. And so the expectation then would be that this would pull colder than normal air into the Ohio Valley, with potentially snowier conditions. But keep in mind, this map is just showing what you might call a typical La Nina winter. And so it really depends on how strong this La Nina gets. Okay? Speaking of that, that's what this graph is showing. This is showing what all of the models are currently projecting for La Nina this year. Now, keep in mind, at a minus 0.5, that is considered to be a weak La Nina. If we can get it down to a minus 1, that is considered to be a moderate La Nina. And if we can get it down to a minus 1.5, that would be considered to be a strong La Nina. So if you look at this graph, and you can see the red line and the black line, the red line is an average of what is called the statistical models. And so all of the statistical models right now are showing basically a very weak La Nina. Technically, if that red line doesn't get down to a minus 0.5, that is considered to be a neutral ENSO, and technically it wouldn't even be a La Nina. If you look at the black line is the average of all the dynamic models, and they're going a little stronger with this La Nina. Right now, you can see if we look at the average of the dynamic models, it's putting us right about at that level of a minus 0.5, which would be a weak La Nina. But here's the thing. Remember what I just showed you a minute ago. We are already at a minus 0.5. So we're already down here. And so in my mind, this is showing us that the La Nina is already ahead of schedule. And based on that, my expectation is that we are going to see this La Nina strengthen. And so I think we're at least going to see a weak to moderate a weak to moderate La Nina. And keep in mind, look at these models. You have several models here that are going into the moderate or even strong territory. And so we're going to have to watch this in the weeks moving forward. If we see this La Nina strengthening, as I'm thinking it could, that is going to change my expectation for what we're going to see in the winter moving forward. All right, so for my prediction, I looked for analog years that had similar conditions to what we're seeing now. Now, what do I mean by that? So right now, I am expecting at least a weak to moderate La Nina, and we are seeing that following a year that we had a strong El Nino. So that's what I looked for on my analog years. Years where there was a weak to moderate La Nina that followed right after a strong El Nino. And I came up with these 5 winters. Most recently, 2016 and 17, 95 and 96 fit that as well as 83 and 84. Then I went back, I saw 66 and 67, and 64 and 65. So I have these 5 analog years. And so then I can go to a website that NOAA has, and I can plug in the data from those years and have it make me a plot based on those analog years. And so here's the first plot that I made. Now, on this map, you can see that I told it to look at the months of November through March. In my mind, those are our winter months. Now, I know winter doesn't officially start until December, but typically in the Ohio Valley, we will see our first snow that sticks to the ground during the month of November, and often we will see the last snow that sticks to the ground during the month of March. Now, of course, sometimes we'll see a sticking snow in April, but I'm using November through March as our primary winter months. And so this map is showing the temperature anomaly based on the average of my analog years. And you can see we're looking at these light blues across the Ohio Valley, which is basically putting us into the area of about -2 on this map. In other words, that would mean that on average, we would see temperatures about 2 degrees colder than normal during this type of a winter. All right, now what about precipitation? So this is the precipitation anomaly map for those same months, November through March. And you can see there's not much going on here. Everything white means that we could see expect to see normal precipitation. Now, that might not sound that exciting, but keep in mind, the last several years, we have seen below normal precipitation, or in other words, below normal snowfall during the last several winters. So for us to see normal snowfall this winter, that's going to seem like a lot more snow than what we've seen in the previous years, because the previous years have certainly not been normal. At least the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen much less snowfall than normal. So normal is going to be an increase for us. Now, what are the models showing so far? Well, let's look at what we're seeing right now on the Arctic Oscillation. That's one of those teleconnections that helps us to gauge what's going on with climate. And you can see with the Arctic Oscillation, it has been very positive over the last few months, but we're seeing here an expectation in the next week or two for that Arctic Oscillation to go negative. Now, for those of you who might not remember with the Arctic Oscillation is actually a measure of the strength of the polar vortex. When the Arctic Oscillation is positive on this graph, that means the polar vortex is very strong, and when it is strong, it will keep all of those Arctic temperatures, those cold Arctic temperatures, will be trapped in the Arctic Circle where they belong. But when the Arctic Oscillation goes negative, that is a sign of a weakening of the polar vortex. And when the polar vortex weakens, that allows that Arctic air to spill down into the lower latitudes, which often includes the Ohio Valley. And so what it's looking like here is in the next week or so, we're going to see that Arctic Oscillation go negative. And the expectation that you can see from this graph is that throughout the fall, throughout this coming fall, right, it only goes into November, we could see an Arctic Oscillation that is negative. And so this could mean that we would start to see those Arctic temperatures start dropping down into the lower latitudes, which perhaps could include the Ohio Valley. Now, if you've been watching any of the short-term weather forecasts, you know that right now the expectation, and I've said this on some of my posts already, the expectation is that September is going to be colder than normal, and that goes right along with what we're seeing here with the Arctic Oscillation. And so the expectation moving forward is that these colder than normal temperatures could persist throughout the fall and into the winter. Now, does that mean, though, that those colder than normal temperatures will be here in the Ohio Valley? Well, in order to determine that, we need to look at the Pacific North American pattern, or PNA. Now, the PNA is actually a measure of the temperatures in the western United States. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with us? We don't live out west. Well, there is a pattern that we often see here. When the PNA goes positive on this map, as you can see back here in the mid-August, right, it was positive. That means that they are seeing warmer than normal temperatures in the western United States. And so you can think of this as like a seesaw. When it's warm out west, it tends to be colder in the east. And so what we see is that when we see the PNA go positive, we often see colder than normal temperatures in the eastern United States, including the Ohio Valley. So if we can couple a negative AO, or a negative Arctic Oscillation, with a positive PNA, that almost always means colder than normal temperatures for the Ohio Valley. And you can see moving forward, the expectation is that during the time that the Arctic Oscillation was negative, we are also going to see a positive PNA. And so if that is the case, if that holds true, then we could be looking at definitely a colder than normal fall, which could possibly mean winter beginning earlier than normal. So here it is, the official winter forecast for 24-25. My expectation based on all of this right now is that we are going to see temperatures slightly colder than normal. Remember, the graph or the map earlier said about 2 degrees colder than normal on average. And right now I'm expecting our snowfall to be near normal. Now, again, for those of you that say, well, that's not that exciting, keep in mind the last couple of years have been way below normal. So seeing snowfall back near normal means we're going to see more snow than we've seen in the recent years. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And again, if you want to see more predictions like this, I hope you consider joining my pro site. You can join there at www.patreon.com, Ohio Valley Weather. See you soon.